Hi everyone and welcome to my video about Jean Piaget. A lot of early childhood educators are asking questions about how to use theories to analyze observations about children. And here is the video that will help you to apply this guy, Piaget, or Jean Piaget, to your observations. So let's get started. This video will introduce you to many concepts of Jean Piaget, but it's definitely not extensive. It just focuses on the most important things that you can start using tomorrow in your classrooms and apply them on paper to your observations or on iPads to your story parks. So Jean Piaget, who was this guy? He was a Swiss psychologist who was quite a talented person, and he wrote his first scientific paper while still at school. So he also was known for being a pioneer in the field of developmental psychology or cognitive psychology. He developed a theory that is still a little bit hard to contest, and he, although been criticized for few points, still is very contemporary theorist. So his theory of cognitive development outlined distinct stages of cognitive growth that all children around the world go through as they mature. By the way, this is one of the points of criticism for Piaget theory as well. So these stages are considered to be universal and characterized by specific cognitive abilities or milestones. Does this word sound familiar? Next video will be on developmental milestones, document and how you can apply them to your observations. So make sure you subscribe and follow Storykate for more informative videos like that. One of the key concepts of Jean Piaget is the concept of ages and stages. One of the key concepts of Jean Piaget is 4 stages of development. So according to Jean Piaget, children go through stages of development. Sensory motor stage is stage number 1. During this stage, infants and babies learn about the world and they explore the world and the environment primarily through senses or sensory perceptions and motor actions. This is very easy to observe. When you are making observations, you can see children manipulating things, put things in their mouths, touch things, they try to lick it or rattle, manipulate. They also learn a lot about their body, which is also an object for them, a new thing. And they might explore their hands, they might explore your face. So this is all sensory motor stage. They gradually develop object permanence, which is an important concept of Piaget. A lot of videos on this subject, I'm not going to cover that. But basically, it's understanding of the objects that are disappearing from the eyes of a baby and they still exist. So you can hide something under the blanket, like a set of keys, or these days it's gonna be a phone, and child will try to look for it. Only after 18 months. Before, they will look confused and they wouldn't know what happened to the object. So this happens a lot with, let's say, when you play with a ball and ball goes under the furniture and the baby doesn't know where to look. This stage is also an important part of developing basic motor skills and exploration of child environment, highly dependent on their ability to move. So as you can see, senses and sensory perceptions should be in focus of many experiences that you are offering to babies up to the age of 2. Pre-operational stage is the next stage of development, and here is how you can apply it to your observations as well. Children at this stage, toddlers and preschoolers up to primary school age children, began to use symbols, which means a lot. So EYLF also covers this in outcome 5. Have a look and read through outcome 5 and find these connections. So children are interested in words and images to represent objects and ideas. So this is a stage of representation. They draw a lot, they scribble, they also start to understand understand signs and symbols. For example, 2 golden arcs. Yeah, we don't want them to, but they do. Or stop sign. They understand sign language or learn to understand that image in the book is not the same as the real object. They also engage in pretend play, and in pretend play they use a lot of symbolic thinking. And they develop understanding of cause and effect, or causality. However, they tend to be egocentric, according to Piaget, which doesn't mean that they are selfish. It just means that they struggle to see other people's perspective. So in a real play, you will see egocentric behavior when 2 children are sitting next to each other or next to you and they draw. Let me show you how it happens. So they sit and they draw, okay? And they usually use their tongue as well. And they say, I'm drawing a horse. Or, we went to the zoo last night. Or something. Whatever they say is quite random anyway. And this really is telling us that they are using what Vygotsky later would call private speech. Yes, so something that children just say as a commentary. But it's important to notice that this is quite a common thing, because children quite often talk at each other, not with each other. So I want you to go back to your placement or work and start listening to how children speak. Do they speak like that as if they're not really listening to each other? So this is quite interesting. Also, he did a series of experiences or experiments where he could see that children do not really see the perspective of another person, which was then proved wrong by Alison Gopnik experiment called broccoli or crackers, which is very interesting, and I'll put it in the description for you to follow. Children's cognitive development at this stage, pre-operational stage, is limited to concrete thinking. So that doesn't mean that they don't understand concepts, but they do struggle with understanding abstract concepts such as sustainability or conservation. Yes, so which is not conservation in terms of sustainability. It's the idea that the quantity of substance remains the same despite changes in its appearance. There is a series of video you can find online about conservation, and you can make these experiences or repeat them with children who are 3 to 5, I would say, or 2 to 7. And you will see how Play-Doh experiment on conservation of water experiment will be fun to reproduce. Yet it does show most of the time the same results. This concept of Piaget was also proven wrong by not just by Alison Gopnik, but this time it was proven wrong by many other researchers. I wouldn't remember their names, who said that sometimes even infants understand some concepts more than Piaget believed them to. Yet at this stage, in general, children don't really understand very abstract things, right? So they still struggle with this symbolic abstract thinking. And if you think about abstract concepts such as friendship, love, which is a little bit hard to put in a proverbial trough or trolley, they're hard to explain to children. They need to have concrete examples. A typical example of that would be, let's say, showing children numbers and talking about math and algebra without having real objects or things they can count. So it's easier to explain the concept of counting using something concrete, like they can put in their hand and count 1, 2, 3, rather than saying 1, 2, 3, or explaining it otherwise without any concrete experiences. So this means for us as educators that we have to plan experiences that have a lot of concrete materials, resources, and explain concepts through engaged play that is including manipulations. But we also can support the understanding of concepts, because by default they do not have it sometimes. Next stage is for school-age children, and I'm going to touch upon it. So just to know where they're heading according to Piaget, it is a concrete operational stage. Here they are more capable of logical thinking, particularly about tangible objects again and events that are familiar, such as birthdays and going to school, etc. They can understand conservation, so finally this experiences become clear for them. So why the glass of water with the same volume, but the glass that is taller has the same volume of water as the glass that is shorter but wider. They also engage in classification and seriation, so arranging objects in order. They start doing it early in pre-operational stage, but they are doing it in a better way in terms of sorting and categorizing. They perform simple mental operations, and that's why they're more capable to learn mathematics and learn to read and write. Abstract or hypothetical thinking is still a little bit challenging for them, so classes of philosophy could be beneficial, but still a little bit more difficult in terms of understanding and deep comprehension. Next one is formal operational stage. It's 11 years and older. During this stage, teenagers and young adults have ability to think abstractly, or abstract thinking is developed, and they can hypothesize what would happen if I will. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't really hypothesize with children or offer them some abstract ideas, but just don't expect them to know and understand. So it's work in progress. Something that my favorite theorist Vygotsky would call zone of proximal development, or the next step. Now let's look at EYLF 2.0, new EYLF, through the lens of Jean Piaget. So here we have principles, practices of EYLF, and learning outcomes. So you can imagine that belonging, being, becoming as three overarching ideas of the EYLF also are applicable to Piaget. For example, being means that children are at the stage of development, yes, so, and they are explorers or little scientists, yes, so we need to offer them that. Becoming is all about becoming more capable and going through the same stages that we just covered, but learning about the world as well. If we look at principles, secure respectful relationships, partnerships, respect for diversity, they all are wonderful principles, but the most applicable one for Piaget theory would be high expectations. Why? Because he would suggest that children are able to construct their understanding of the world, and although they all go through stages that are universal, some children reach these stages faster, some slower, and as we know now, some actually do not reach stages or skip them, or due to neurodiversity might never achieve this level of abstract thinking, let's say. Practices are also applicable to Piaget theory, for example, holistic, integrated and interconnected approaches. So we can apply his theory not only to cognitive development, but all domains of development. So this supports holistic learning. As children are exploring the world or environment, Piaget didn't narrow it down to, let's say, paper-based environment. So it was environment as is, complex, beautiful nature, environment that is social environment, so all sorts of environments. Responsiveness to children would be very, very valuable for our understanding of Piaget theory, and we can apply it here because we need to watch children, observe them, and respond to their interests in objects, introduce concepts. We can also offer them more manipulative experiences and more sensory experiences if they are young babies and at pre-operational stage as preschoolers, toddlers and preschoolers. Play-based learning and intentionality definitely related to Piaget, because Piaget believed that children learn through manipulation, their exploration of environment, and the best way they explore is through play. Learning environments should be well prepared for children, so they need to be exposed to a wide range of experiences because they are going through sensory motor stage. These environments should allow children to move, manipulate, explore, smell, sense, etc. Also, assessment evaluation for learning and particular development would be applicable practice that is linked to Piaget theory, because when you watch for children's actions, what they're doing, what stage they're in at the moment, you can better support development. And for that, you will need the next video document, developmental milestone, that is really great and free, of course. Learning outcomes that you can link to Piaget. Of course, you can link all outcomes because they are quite large and broad and they have sub-outcomes, and you can find links to Piaget throughout. But I found that these two are particularly linked to Piaget. Children are confident and involved learners, where some aspects of Piaget theory are present, and also children are effective communicators. Because Piaget was not only a cognitive psychologist who learned about thinking, he also learned about language, because language and thinking are interconnected. So how children communicate is very much influenced how they think. And that's why Vygotsky and Piaget are slightly different, but it's not the point of this presentation. So in on reflection, you might also think about what do you remember about Piaget theory from your studying, or maybe you read some textbooks, or even read Piaget book. It's quite a lot of them. It's at least 3 that are worth attention. Understanding Piaget theory can definitely help us as early childhood educators. You can get insights into how children of different ages think, learn, and acquire knowledge. Yeah. For example, readiness. That would be one of the concepts that I would pay attention to as a teacher and educator. Because we already touched upon ages and stages, Piaget emphasized the importance of readiness for learning. So you cannot skip through stages. You need to be ready for this next step, and you need to be ready for the experiences that are offered. Before introducing any new concepts or experiences or skills, such as, let's say, dress, undress, or hold a spoon, or do the math, you need to assess through our observations whether children have reached the appropriate developmental stage. For instance, in early childhood education, you can use Piaget theory to decide whether children are ready for formal math as instructional worksheets. Sometimes educators, not you of course, because you're watching Storykate, insist on some formal methods of teaching in early childhood, and the quick hint, it's not appropriate for this particular reason: readiness. Yes, it's not just a readiness for school, it's readiness for the experiences. So assessing readiness, whether it's social readiness, readiness to share, readiness to self-regulate, you will find is really relevant in terms of Piaget theory. Most children in pre-operational stage, and we have sensory motor stage and pre-operational stage children in early childhood, may not be ready for abstract mathematical concepts. So it's important to start with concrete hands-on activities, such as counting pine cones and stones, touching things with hand to count, even when they eat. Let's say you can say 1 piece of carrot, 2 pieces of carrot, to build this foundation. So that's about everything you do. Now let's think about another quick application of Jean Piaget theory. As you can see, adapting teaching strategies. So Piaget theory highlights that children actively construct their knowledge through interaction with the environment, so which makes Piaget constructivist. Yeah, along with Vygotsky, of course. So we have to think of teaching strategies that encourage active learning, as Piaget was saying, active exploration and discovery. So think about how you can add more discovery learning into your program. For example, here you can see on this picture that children are involved in something quite active. Can you guess what are they doing? So we are actually teaching them to read by making fun game of decoding. So they have to unpack the code that I created, which aligns with Piaget emphasis on learning through concrete experiences. So they are thinking they are looking for treasure, but for real they're learning to read. So this is how I approach reading and writing in general, and teaching math through gamifying it. But it's also a lot of discovery in this process, and children love that. Next thing you can consider is differentiation. Differentiation is more relevant to school, but I think it's also applicable to early childhood education and care because of ages and stages. So to differentiate means that you recognize that children go through Piaget stages and ages at different rates. So one child might reach the end of sensory motor stage and move to pre-operational stage at the age of 2, while the other child would do it at the age of 3. Some children will still be involved in a lot of sensory motor experiences. To be honest, in my opinion, most of them still are involved in sensory motor exploration, and sometimes just go back as well when they're tired, or when they learn something new, they might actually retreat to the ways they learn better. So we have to tailor our, I wouldn't say instructions, but teaching strategies to the level of cognitive development of this particular child. So it's individualized learning as well. We have to provide opportunities for children to work at their own pace and explore their interests and the things that they are particularly involved and engaged in. So it could be culturally important things, it could be something they're at the moment exploring, for example dinosaurs, or it could be their favorite hero from mass media, which we now have to also take into account. So this approach is relevant to us as early childhood educators because we are able to provide self-directed play and individualized learning in our play-based classrooms. In context of cognitive psychology and Jean Piaget cognitive development, one of the most important concepts is schema. So plural is schemas or schemata, and this is really, really important concept, and I hope that this video will explain you why. So it's a mental framework or organized structure that individuals use to make sense of and interpret the world around them. Do you remember that children are constructing their world or understanding of the world according to Jean Piaget? So then schema is one of those blueprints or templates that help children to process, categorize, and understand information. You are using schema a lot through the day, and children also learn how to use schema. So I think personally that's one of the overlooked concepts of Jean Piaget. It really needs to be taught in vocational education when we prepare Certificate 3 educators, which I do, of course, as you can imagine. But it's also important for all educators working in family daycare, even parents, to understand what schema is. So as you can see, schema is a cognitive structure that represents a person's knowledge or mental framework about a particular concept, object, event, or category. So it could be something like a birthday party. So think about what comes to your mind when you think about birthday party. Yes, probably it is about cake. Yeah, I trialed this question on many groups of my students, and most people come up with an idea of a cake. Maybe you were thinking about balloons or gifts or friends who are saying happy birthday to you. So, whatever it is, we have the schema that is pretty much more or less alike. Of course, there are cultural variations, but that's notwithstanding, it's really important part of understanding of the world or constructing the world. So schema includes information about characteristics or attributes and relationships associated with this particular concept. So I named attributes of birthday parties such as cake, balloons, and gifts. You might also add guests, yes, or relationships, and maybe some other things like party games. Schemas are developed through individual experiences, so we all had our experiences with birthday parties, whether it was our birthday or someone else's birthday. Also learning and interactions with the environment. So we can introduce schemas such as looking after the world as well, such as sustainability. We can introduce schemas intentionally, and we can introduce schemas through setting up our play spaces in a way that supports understanding of the routines, supports sharing and social learning. Here he is, Jean Piaget, a very productive theorist. So he was saying that schemas are fundamental for cognitive development. Yeah, he believed that children grow, learn, and as they grow and learn, they construct and modify schemas to accommodate new information and adapt to their changing understanding of the world. Schemas play a key role in how individuals perceive, learn, and interact with their environment. So yay for schemas. Here are some examples of what you can see in your classrooms. And of course, you can use these schemas, as you can imagine, for your observations and analysis of observations. So I'm not going to read all of them. I'm going to keep it here on the slides so you can have a look at them. If you pause the video, you can read them really well. But they summarize some of the typical schemas of the 3-year-old child. So, animal schema. Most children at this age know dogs, cats, birds, some insects, right? And they're able to categorize animals based on characteristics like fur or feather. Food schema. They love to eat and they had experiences in life, so they know how to group food in categories such as apples, carrots, biscuits, vegetables, snacks. Yes, so it's not like a pre-operational stage or a concrete operational stage when they're able to sort really well. So it's more about basic understanding. Family schema. Most children know mom, dad, or mom, dad, brother, sister, uncle. So different types of families would obviously produce different types of schema. Shapes and colors. Of course, we have red, blue, circles, squares, etc. Most children understand the schema of primary colors and basic shapes. Transportation schema, very interesting. It is based on movement, and there are cars, trains, bicycles, buses, everything that moves. We also have emotions, yes, so and they are categorized as well as happy, sad, excited, and angry, etc. So I'm gonna just keep going. For example, and I will give you some examples based on what I have seen children, how they learn, and this will be based on birds. Yes, so the concept of assimilation is a fundamental aspect of schema concept in general and his theory of cognitive development. So concept of assimilation plays a significant role in terms of understanding the world, because it's a process through which child take in new information and experiences, right? And incorporate them into the existing mental structure, remember, which is called schema. So here's how assimilation works with, let's say, a bird, right? So I thought that would be quite relevant with a bird. It happens when child encounters new information or experiences that are consistent with the existing cognitive schemas. In this process, the child integrates the new information into pre-existing knowledge or their prior knowledge, making it fit within the current understanding of the world. I'll give you an example which might get really clear. Imagine child has a schema for birds that includes animals with wings and feathers. So you can see on this picture that I took during one of my trips that there are birds here. So they are different, but they all have wings and feathers. When the child encounters, let's say, a robin, they assimilate it into existing schema. When they encounter pelican, they also assimilate it into existing schema by categorizing the pelican as a type of bird because it has wings and feathers. They also might see a cormorant, and they might see other birds and look at their existing schema, and it's got wings and feathers, hence it is a bird. Now imagine that they see a dog. What do you think is happening here? They check whether it's got feathers and wings, and they don't see it. So there is a process that Piaget called disequilibrium, so it doesn't fit the current schema, and hence they have to do something different. Yes, so which means that they need to create a new schema or add it to another schema that already exists about, let's say, animals with 4 legs and 1 tail. So it's quite an interesting idea about how children learn. And if you look at this slide here, we can see another bird. Yeah, what kind of bird is it? So yeah, I'll let you think. Imagine if you don't know, so you can try to accommodate it into your schema. So accommodation is the process of modifying existing schemas and creating new ones when information doesn't fit existing mental structures. Put it simply, you have to adjust and modify. Yeah, an effective learning process involves a balance between assimilating new information into existing schemas and accommodating when necessary to adapt and refine those schemas. Let's use the examples of pelican and albatross to illustrate the concept of schema, accommodation, and the context of child understanding of the birds. Assume, here I am flying on an albatross. Assume that child has a basic schema for birds, which we already covered, that these are animals with wings and feathers. In this schema, many common birds like sparrows, robins, pigeons fit comfortably because they have wings and feathers. Pelican characteristics. Yeah? Pelicans on the right are birds. They have some distinctive features, and they don't fit neatly in the previous experience of the child. So, for example, pelicans have very, very long bills, like this one, with large pouch beneath them they use for catching fish. So usually the role of an adult to point at these characteristics, and that's why I was saying that Piaget was very strong on the language and teaching through language. So please name this to your children in your center or your family daycare or on your placement, because they need it. They need it for language development, but they also need it for cognitive development and development of these schemas. So, accommodation process is happening here. To accommodate this new information, the child may need to adjust the existing bird schema. They might create a new category within their schema for water birds or birds with long bills and pouches. So think about what's gonna happen if you keep walking and you see a duck. Yes, so a bird has feathers and it's got wings, but it also swims. Yes, so and this way pelican and the duck or the geese or whoever you will meet next as a water bird, they will fit within this new schema of water birds. Here we go. Another one, albatross. Albatross is a bird that is very beautiful, and if you wonder what did you see on one of those slides, it was albatross. It's a large seabird known for the exceptional wingspan and very beautiful to watch when they are floating over the sea. They glide over the ocean for long distances and they spend hours and hours and days sometimes without landing. So like pelican, child might need to accommodate this bird into different category within the bird schema. They could create a category like large ocean birds or something like that. Our birds with enormous wingspans. This kind of accommodation allows child to understand that albatrosses have unique characteristics or unique features not shared by typical birds in their schemas, but they're still birds. Yeah, so and this is cognitive development as a process. Yeah, and this is Piaget input to our profession as well. And when you understand all these important processes, you also can help children to learn more about the world as well. So, but you also can add it to your analysis of observations. So you might say that by exploring the birds, children during our walk today to the park or when we played outside, we noticed magpies and ravens. And we also could hear magpies call, and we could hear seabirds like seagulls, I don't know, fighting over something. You can add that children are developing the schema of birds and they are able to identify the significant features of birds such as wings, feathers, and call. You also can describe concepts that children are able to grasp, and you are able to describe the process of accommodation. So this will make your observations really rich and at the level that I would say UILF expects us to. Yeah, and it says it's from department. That's what they also want to see in terms of depth of observations. They want to see theories applied to our analysis, not just general words and meaningless links to outcomes. So let's look at some concepts here. So child schema, birds have wings for pelican, birds have wings and feathers for albatross. Pelican traits has wings and feathers. For albatross has wings and feathers, but much larger and can glide over the ocean. Assimilation assimilates pelican into existing bird schema because it shares the characteristics of having wings and feathers. Similarly, assimilates albatross into the existing bird schema because it also has wings and feathers, even though it's much larger and has unique abilities. Now, a little bit of homework for you. You know how children like animals and they play with toy animals a lot in the center? I want you to look at it through this lens of schema or schemata and see the traits that children are able to understand and see the process of assimilation and the process of accommodation. Let's delve a little bit more into our pelicans and albatrosses schemas. So here we have observation of a real child who noticed pelican and albatross. As part of our Bush Kinder program, children are visiting a coastal area where they come across a pelican and an albatross. So relying on the animal schema, child may point to the pelican and say something like, "Look, it's a bird." Their reaction demonstrates the initial assimilation of a pelican into the existing bird schema based on shared characteristics, wings and feathers. Here, you can add it to your observation analysis. Assimilation with albatross. When they see the albatross with its large wingspan gliding gracefully, they might also categorize it as a big bird or giant bird, simulating it in their bird schema based on the wings and feathers they see. Assimilation with pelican. Upon seeing the pelican's long bill pouch, child might react with curiosity, saying, "The bird has a big mouth. Is it eating something?" This suggests that they are in the process of assimilating the pelican into the bird schema but are noticing its unique features. Finally, accommodation example. As the child observes these unique birds more closely, they may start to accommodate their schemas. For example, they might ask questions like, "Why is this bird so big?" Or, "Why does the bird glide like that?" These questions show that the child is beginning to recognize that these birds have characteristics that don't quite fit their existing bird schema. So instead of just writing "children ask questions," if you are doing, let's say, inquiry-based learning, you can use Piaget theory to enrich your inquiry analysis and then ask deeper questions and show the process of thinking through using schema, accommodation, assimilation. Okay, so what else do we see in children development when we are using Piaget theory? Look, he's got 3 books, right? So he wrote a lot. So we can delve deeper and deeper into his theory, but some key concepts that we can also start noticing in our analysis and add them to your analysis are the following. Language development. The child has egocentric speech, according to Piaget. So you can research it a little bit more, but you also can just add words and phrases that child has learned and describe what they see, which would be building on vocabulary schema. You also can explain how they're developing their language skills through play. For example, they start using sentences, they use 2-word sentences and expressions, etc. Learning through exploration is a big Piaget relevant concept. So child engagement with the pelican and albatross reflects their natural inclination to learn through exploration. And that's a hallmark of their development at this age. So this also matches their pre-operational stage. So you can link it to pre-operational stage of development. And you can say that they are able to see concrete examples. Yeah, remember concrete examples, not abstract birds and different types of birds. Learning through play also aligns closely with Jean Piaget's theory of development. Piaget theory emphasizes the idea that children actively construct their knowledge, and actively is the key here. Understanding of the world through interactions with the environment. Play is natural and vital avenue through which children engage in these interactions. And next time we will look at Vygotsky and how his theory would be relevant to our birdwatch. Maybe that would be a good comparison. So if you like this video explaining Piaget theory and how it can be applied to your observations, feel free to share your comments below, and also let me know what else do you want me to explain with some concrete examples or other concepts that you are struggling with. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.